I never expected to see my son at Harold's funeral. 20 years of silence, and suddenly there he was, standing in the doorway of the funeral home like some kind of celebrity. Designer suit, dark glasses, that same defiant posture he'd had since he was a teenager. The hushed conversations around me stopped as heads turned. I felt my heart split open. "Who's that?" whispered Marion, my best friend of 30 years, who'd been holding my hand through the entire service. "That's Alex," I said, my voice barely audible. "My son. The son who disappeared on his 18th birthday after a devastating fight with his father. The son who'd never called, never written, never let me know if he was even alive all these years. The son whose bedroom I'd kept exactly the same, whose birthday I celebrated alone each year with a small cupcake and a candle that I blew out while making the same wish. Please let him come home." And now, here he was, at his father's funeral. Too late for reconciliation. Too late for the apologies Harold had practiced, but never got to deliver. Alex didn't look at me as he walked down the aisle. He moved with purpose toward the open casket where Harold lay. The funeral director gave me a questioning glance, but I nodded slightly. Let him say goodbye. Let him have this moment. But Alex didn't seem interested in goodbyes. He stood by the casket for less than 10 seconds, no emotion visible on his face. Then he turned to face the small gathering of mourners, Harold's colleagues from the accounting firm, our neighbors, a few distant relatives. "Thank you all for coming," he said loudly, as if he were the host. My father would have appreciated the gesture. The funeral director looked confused. This wasn't part of the program we'd discussed. I started to rise from my seat, but then Alex pulled a document from his inner pocket. "Before we conclude today's service, there's an important matter to address." His voice was steady, confident, so much like Harold's that it made my chest ache. "My father contacted me 6 months ago. We met in Geneva, where I've been living." Murmurs rippled through the room. 6 months ago? Harold had never mentioned reconnecting with Alex. He would have told me immediately, wouldn't he? During our reconciliation, my father expressed regret about many things. Alex continued. "Most importantly, he wanted to ensure I was properly taken care of after decades of estrangement." He unfolded the papers in his hand. "This is my father's most recent will, signed and notarized in Switzerland. It supersedes any previous versions." The room went completely silent. I felt a cold sensation spreading through my body. "The will is quite simple," Alex said, his eyes finally finding mine behind his dark glasses, which he lowered slightly to look at me directly. "My father would have wanted me to have everything." His gaze moved over the stunned faces in the room. "The house, the savings, the investments, all of it." He pointed at me, and I felt dozens of eyes turn in my direction. "She gets nothing," he said flatly. For a moment, I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room seemed to tilt around me. "That's absurd," Marion said beside me, rising to her feet. "Elizabeth and Harold were married for 43 years. Alex smiled, a cold, unfamiliar smile. "The will is quite clear and legally binding." "Let me see that," said Harold's brother Richard, moving toward Alex with his hand outstretched. As the document passed between them, I found my voice at last. "There must be some mistake," I said. "Harold and I discussed our wills only last year. Everything was settled." Alex shrugged. "People change their minds, especially when they learn certain truths." "What truths?" I asked, standing now despite my shaking legs. "Perhaps we should discuss this privately," Alex suggested, glancing around at the increasingly uncomfortable gathering. "After all, family matters should remain within the family, shouldn't they?" I felt a surge of anger cutting through my grief and shock. "We haven't been a family since you walked out that door 20 years ago." "That's not entirely accurate, Mother," Alex said, emphasizing the word mother in a way that made it sound like an accusation. "There were reasons I left, reasons Father finally understood." Richard handed the document back to Alex, his face grim. "This looks authentic, Liz. It has Harold's signature." I shook my head. "It can't be. Harold would never—" But doubt crept in. Harold had been acting strangely in recent months, distant, secretive about meetings and phone calls. I'd attributed it to stress from his recent retirement. But what if— "I've already spoken with the executor," Alex continued smoothly. You'll need to vacate the house within 30 days. The room erupted in shocked exclamations. My neighbor Clara came to put her arm around my shoulders. This is outrageous. It's the law, Alex replied coldly. And Father's final wish. My mind raced. 43 years of marriage. A lifetime of memories in our home. All my belongings, photos, treasures collected over decades. My garden that I'd nurtured for 25 years. All gone with a single piece of paper? As the reality of my situation sank in, something shifted inside me. The initial shock gave way to a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I reached for my phone. What are you doing? Alex asked, suddenly looking less confident. Calling a lawyer, I said, scrolling through my contacts. One who owes me a favor. Alex's smirk faltered slightly. It won't change anything. The will is ironclad. I found the number I was looking for, Martin Goldstein. The same lawyer who'd helped us adopt Alex all those years ago when we'd been told I couldn't have children. The same lawyer whose daughter I'd tutored through high school and college when she was struggling with dyslexia, spending countless evenings at our dining room table until she finally graduated law school herself. We'll see about that, I said, pressing the call button. Alex's expression hardened. I don't think you understand what you're up against, he said quietly, so only I could hear. I know things about you and Harold that you wouldn't want made public. The phone began to ring in my ear as I held Alex's gaze. Are you threatening me? At your father's funeral? Not threatening, he replied. Just making sure you understand the situation clearly. This doesn't have to be messy. Martin's voicemail picked up, and I left a brief, urgent message. When I looked up again, Alex was addressing the stunned funeral guests. I apologize for this unfortunate business, he said smoothly. Please, continue paying your respects. I'll make myself available after the service for anyone who wishes to share memories of my father. As he moved to take a seat in the front row, my seat next to where I had been sitting, I noticed something odd. The watch on his wrist. It looked exactly like the vintage Rolex that Harold's father had given him, the one he'd told me just last month he wanted to be buried wearing. I glanced at Harold's body in the casket, his hands folded peacefully on his chest. His wrist was bare, and suddenly I realized this was about much more than a will. The days after Harold's funeral passed in a blur. I moved through our home, possibly soon to be my former home, touching familiar objects, wondering which memories I could pack and which would be left behind with the walls that had contained them. This is clearly fraud, Martin Goldstein said, adjusting his reading glasses as he examined the will Alex had presented. We were sitting in my kitchen, where I'd served him coffee in the ceramic mugs Harold and I had bought on our honeymoon in Portugal. Harold's signature looks authentic, but there are irregularities here that concern me. What kind of irregularities? I asked, hope flickering to life. The notary stamp is from Switzerland, but the format isn't quite right, and the witnessing procedures don't follow standard protocol. He looked up at me, his kind eyes serious. Liz, when exactly did Harold retire? 4 months ago. Why? This will claims he met with a Swiss notary 6 months ago, but you told me he was still working then. Did Harold travel to Switzerland recently? I shook my head. The last time we were in Europe was for our 40th anniversary 3 years ago. Paris and Rome, not Switzerland. Martin made notes. And his passport would confirm this? Yes. It's in his desk drawer upstairs. Good. We'll need that. He leaned forward. Now, about Alex. Tell me everything you know about his current life. I stared into my coffee. That's just it, Martin. I know nothing. After he left, we tried everything to find him. Private investigators, missing persons reports. For years, Harold checked morgues whenever unidentified young men were found. My voice broke. Eventually, we had to accept that he didn't want to be found. And yet, here he is, Martin mused, with a suspiciously convenient will and, from what you've told me, wearing your husband's heirloom watch. Can we challenge the will? Prove it's a forgery? We can, and we will. But we need to understand what we're dealing with first. Martin closed his folder. I'm having my daughter Kara look into Alex's background. If he's been living in Europe as he claims, there will be a paper trail. Just then, my phone rang. The screen showed unknown caller. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. Mrs. Elizabeth Harrington? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, speaking. This is Nurse Coleman from Memorial Hospital. I'm calling about your son, Alexander Harrington. My heart leapt into my throat. What's happened? Is he all right? Martin looked up sharply. He was brought in this morning after collapsing at his hotel. He's stable, but he's asking for you. I felt a confusing mix of concern and suspicion. Did he say why? No, ma'am. Just that it's urgent he speak with you. After ending the call, I relayed the conversation to Martin. This could be a trap, he warned. A way to manipulate you emotionally. Or he could actually be sick, I countered. He's still my son, Martin. Martin sighed. If you're going, I'm coming with you. And we're bringing Kara to meet us there. Memorial Hospital was where Harold had died just a week earlier, and walking through those automatic doors sent a wave of grief washing over me. The antiseptic smell, the hushed voices, the squeak of rubber-soled shoes on polished floors, it all brought back the night I'd lost my husband to a sudden heart attack. Now I was here for my son. Despite everything, maternal instinct trumped caution. Room 412. The receptionist directed us. As we rode the elevator, Martin spoke quietly. Let him do most of the talking, and remember that anything he says could be calculated. I nodded, but my thoughts were elsewhere. The last time I'd seen Alex before the funeral, he'd been 18, all lanky limbs and angry eyes, shouting that he hated us before slamming the door. What had happened in those 20 years to turn my sensitive boy into the cold man at the funeral? Outside room 412, we met Kara Goldstein, Martin's daughter. Now a successful attorney in her own right. She'd been just 14 when I'd started tutoring her. Elizabeth, she said warmly, embracing me. I'm so sorry about Harold. And now this mess. She held up a tablet. I've been doing some digging on Alex. We need to talk after your visit. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. The room was private, sunlight streaming through Venetian blinds. Alex lay in the hospital bed, an IV in his arm, his face pale but his eyes alert. Gone was the confident man from the funeral. He looked vulnerable, almost like the boy I remembered. You came, he said, sounding genuinely surprised. Of course I came. You're my son. The words came automatically, despite everything. His eyes flicked to Martin and Kara, standing behind me. I wanted to speak to you alone. That's not happening, Martin said firmly. Anything you have to say to Elizabeth, you can say in front of us. Alex's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fine. Have a seat, Mother. I sat in the chair beside the bed, noticing how he emphasized mother again, not with warmth, but as if reminding me of a role I'd failed to perform adequately. What happened? I asked. The nurse said you collapsed. Exhaustion, apparently, and dehydration. He gestured to the IV. Nothing serious. I waited, sensing there was more. Finally, he spoke again. Do you know why I left? He asked, his voice quiet. You had a fight with your father. About college. About your future. I swallowed hard. But we never understood why you cut us off completely. We looked for you for years, Alex. Did you? His tone was bitter. Or did you just go on with your perfect lives, relieved to be free of the disappointment? That's not fair, I said, feeling a flare of anger. We never stopped looking. Never stopped hoping. Then why didn't you find me? I wasn't exactly hiding. Kara stepped forward. Actually, you were. She turned her tablet toward him, showing what looked like a database search. Alexander Harrington legally changed his name to Alexander Reeves in 2006, obtained a new social security number through questionable means, moved to Europe in 2009 after a series of jobs that never lasted more than 6 months. She scrolled down. And here's the interesting part. No record of you entering Switzerland in the past year. No residence permit. No Swiss bank accounts. Alex's face darkened. You've been investigating me? Of course we have, Martin interjected. You show up after 20 years with a suspicious will that disinherits your mother. What did you expect? Alex looked at me, ignoring the others. Did you ever wonder why Dad and I fought that night? What it was really about? An uneasy feeling crawled up my spine. He told me you were angry about the restrictions he was putting on your college fund, that he wanted you to major in business instead of art. Alex laughed, a harsh sound. Is that what he told you? Typical. Then what was it about? I asked. He seemed to be weighing something in his mind, deciding how much to reveal. Finally, he reached for a small bag on his bedside table. I found these when I was 17, looking for my birth certificate. He pulled out a stack of old yellowed envelopes tied with string. They were hidden in Dad's filing cabinet, inside a folder marked Insurance. I stared at the envelopes, not understanding. What are they? Letters, Alex said quietly. From your sister Joanne. I felt the blood drain from my face. I don't have a sister. Alex's eyes narrowed. That's what I thought too, until I read these. He held them out to me. Take them. Read them. Then maybe you'll understand why I left. With trembling hands, I took the bundle. The top envelope was addressed to Harold Harrington at our old address from before Alex was born. The return address showed Joanne Matthews with a location in Sacramento. This doesn't make any sense, I whispered. I'm an only child. My parents died when I was in college. There's never been any Joanne. Read the letters, Alex insisted. Then we'll talk again. As I stared at the unfamiliar handwriting, a nurse entered the room. I'm sorry, but Mr. Reeves needs to rest now. You can come back during evening visiting hours. Standing to leave, I clutched the letters against my chest. Why are you giving me these now? Alex's expression was unreadable. Because the will isn't the whole story, Mother. It never was. As we walked out of the hospital, I felt as if the ground beneath my feet had turned to quicksand. Martin and Kara exchanged concerned glances. What did he mean about a sister? Kara asked gently. I don't know, I admitted. I've never heard of Joanne Matthews in my life. Martin looked grave. Whatever game Alex is playing, these letters are part of it. We should read them together, back at your house. I nodded, but a cold fear had settled in my stomach. Why would Harold have kept letters from a woman claiming to be my sister? And what did they have to do with Alex's disappearance? Or his sudden return? As we reached Martin's car, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. The letters are just the beginning. Ask yourself why your husband lied about me for your entire marriage, and why he finally decided to make things right before he died. Attached was a photo that made my blood freeze. Harold and Alex together, looking much older than when Alex had left. They were standing in front of a building I didn't recognize, Harold's arm around Alex's shoulders, both smiling. The timestamp on the photo read, February 15th, 2025. Just 3 months ago. I stared at the photograph until my eyes burned. Harold and Alex together, smiling. The betrayal cut deeper than any knife could have reached. 3 months ago, I whispered, showing Martin and Kara the image on my phone. While I was visiting my cousin in Florida, he told me he had a business conference in Chicago. Martin studied the photo. Can we verify this is authentic? The building behind them, Kara said, zooming in. That's the Matterhorn Museum in Zermatt, Switzerland. She looked up at me, her expression grave. This supports Alex's claim about meeting Harold there. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. Harold had lied to me. For how long? About what else? Let's focus on these letters first, Martin suggested gently. One revelation at a time. Back at the house, we spread the letters across my dining room table, the same table where I'd tutored Kara years ago. The envelopes were arranged by date, spanning from 1992 to 2003. That's the year before we adopted Alex, I noted, my voice hollow. With trembling fingers, I opened the earliest letter. The handwriting was neat, feminine. Dear Harold, I hope this letter finds you well. I've respected your wishes for the past 5 years, but I can no longer remain silent. Elizabeth deserves to know the truth about her past, about our parents, about me. Your intentions may be good, they always were, but lies, even those meant to protect, eventually destroy what they're meant to preserve. I'm not asking to disrupt your lives. I only want my sister to know I exist. The doctors say Mother's condition is worsening. She's asking for Elizabeth more frequently now. Sometimes, in her clearer moments, she asks why her youngest daughter never visits. Please reconsider, before it's too late for all of us. Your sister-in-law, Joanne. I read the letter aloud, my voice catching on the words, our parents. When I finished, Silence filled the room. "This can't be real," I finally said. "My parents died in a car accident when I was 19. There was never any sister." Martin placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Keep reading, Liz." The second letter, dated 6 months later, was shorter. "Harold, Father passed away last night. Mother doesn't understand why Elizabeth wasn't at the funeral. I couldn't bear to tell her that her own daughter doesn't even know she's alive. This has gone too far. Tell her the truth or I will. Joanne." By the fifth letter, my hands were shaking so badly that Kara had to read for me. "It's been 10 years now, Harold. 10 years of watching our mother decline, asking for the daughter who thinks she's dead. Whatever happened between you and Elizabeth before your marriage, whatever you're trying to protect her from, it's not worth this pain. Mother is in a care facility now. The doctors give her perhaps another year. This is Elizabeth's last chance to say goodbye to her mother, to learn about the family she's forgotten, or been made to forget." I pushed away from the table, unable to breathe. The room seemed to spin around me. "Elizabeth?" Martin's voice sounded far away. "This is impossible," I gasped. "I remember my parents' funeral. I remember identifying their bodies after the accident. I remember everything." "Do you?" Kara asked gently. "Or do you remember what you were told to remember?" I sank back into my chair, suddenly aware of a strange emptiness in my memories. I remembered my father's laugh, my mother's perfume, but their faces were blurry, as if seen through frosted glass. "The last letter," I whispered. "Read the last one." Kara picked up the final envelope, postmarked 2003. "Harold, Mother passed away yesterday. She called for Elizabeth until the end. I've attached her obituary and a family photo taken at Christmas 5 years ago. It includes our brothers, their children, Elizabeth's nieces and nephews she's never met. I won't write again. You've made your choice, and I've made mine. But know this. Someday, the truth will come out. Lies always surface, no matter how deeply they're buried. Goodbye." Joanne Kara carefully removed a yellowed newspaper clipping and a photograph from the envelope. The obituary was for Margaret Matthews, age 76. Among the survivors listed was daughter Elizabeth of Boston. The photograph showed an elderly woman in a wheelchair, surrounded by a large family gathered around a Christmas tree. "That's her," I said, pointing to the woman in the wheelchair with a certainty that startled me. "That's my mother." The recognition hit me like a physical blow. How could I recognize a woman I'd never met? A woman I believed had died decades ago. Yet somewhere deep inside, beyond conscious memory, I knew her. Martin leaned forward. "Elizabeth, is there anything at all, from before you met Harold that seems strange in retrospect? Gaps in your memory? Inconsistencies?" I closed my eyes, trying to focus. "We met in college, my sophomore year after my parents died. I was struggling. Harold helped me through it. He was a graduate student then, 5 years older. Did you ever see photographs of your parents after their deaths? Visit their graves?" Harold said it was too painful, that we should focus on our future, not the past. I opened my eyes, a chill running through me. He helped me sell their house, handled all the paperwork. I was so grief-stricken I just let him. Kara was typing rapidly on her tablet. "Elizabeth, what was your maiden name?" "Bennett," I replied automatically, then hesitated. "At least that's what's on our marriage certificate." "There's no record of an Elizabeth Bennett attending Boston University in the years you mentioned," Kara said, looking up from her screen. "But there is an Elizabeth Matthews." The room tilted again. I gripped the edge of the table. "What's happening?" I whispered. "Am I losing my mind?" "No," Martin said firmly. "But I think someone wanted you to believe you might be." He gathered the letters carefully. "These raise very serious questions about Harold, about your past, and about Alex's motivations." "Alex," I said, the name suddenly burning in my throat. He knew. All this time he knew something I didn't about my own life. "Maybe not all this time," Kara suggested. "The last letter is dated a year before you adopted him. He said he found these when he was 17, looking for his birth certificate. That would have been..." She did a quick calculation. "About 2005. The year before he disappeared," I confirmed. A terrible thought occurred to me. What if Harold did something to me? Something to make me forget my real family. Martin and Kara exchanged glances. That's a very serious allegation, Martin said carefully, but not impossible. There have been cases of psychological manipulation, especially with someone in a vulnerable state. Like a grieving college student, I said bitterly. We need more information, Kara decided. I'm going to contact the care facility mentioned in the letters, see if they have records of Margaret Matthews, and I'll try to locate Joanne. And I, Martin added, am going to speak with a neuropsychologist colleague of mine. If there was manipulation, there might be ways to recover your true memories. I nodded, feeling simultaneously numb and hyper-aware. Everything I thought I knew about my life suddenly seemed suspect. What about Alex? I asked. And the will? One step at a time, Martin advised. But I think it's clear that whatever game Alex is playing, it's more complex than simply trying to steal your inheritance. As they prepared to leave, promising to return the next day, my phone rang again. The hospital. Mrs. Harrington? This is Dr. Winters from Memorial. I'm afraid there's been a development with your son. My heart clenched. What's happened? He's gone, ma'am. Left the hospital against medical advice about an hour ago. He removed his IV and simply walked out. Security footage shows him getting into a taxi. I thanked the doctor and ended the call, relaying the information to Martin and Kara. This isn't good. Martin frowned. He's clearly playing some kind of long game. After they left, I sat alone in my living room, surrounded by photographs of the life Harold and I had built. 43 years of memories. But were any of them real? Had our entire marriage been founded on some elaborate deception? I picked up our wedding portrait. Harold looked so handsome, so sincere. Had he been lying even then? And if so, why? What could possibly justify erasing my entire family from my life? The doorbell rang, startling me. It was nearly 9 p.m., too late for casual visitors. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in her 60s, gray-streaked hair pulled back in a neat bun, her face lined but kind. Somehow familiar, though I couldn't place her. "Who is it?" I called, not opening the door. "Elizabeth?" The woman's voice was tentative. "My name is Joanne Matthews. I believe you recently received some letters I wrote to your husband." My breath caught. I unlatched the door with shaking hands and pulled it open. "I know this is a shock," she said gently, "but I'm your sister, and it's time you learned the truth about what Harold did to you all those years ago." Behind her, parked at the curb, I could see a car with its engine running, and in the driver's seat, watching us intently, was Alex. "May I come in?" Joanne asked, her voice gentle yet firm, the voice of someone accustomed to navigating difficult situations. I glanced again at the car where Alex sat watching us. "Is he part of this?" "Alex found me," she explained. "After all these years, we've been comparing notes." Hesitantly, I stepped aside to let her enter. As she passed, I caught a whiff of perfume, something floral and familiar that triggered a flash of memory. A garden, laughter, someone's hands guiding mine as I planted seeds in warm soil. "You're staring," Joanne said softly. "You remind me of someone," I replied. "But I can't quite—" "Our mother." She smiled sadly. "You always took after her. Same eyes. Same way of tilting your head when you're thinking." In my living room, Joanne looked around at the photographs on the walls. "You've had a good life," she observed. "Beautiful home, successful husband." "Had," I corrected, the bitterness in my voice surprising me. Apparently, my successful husband was a liar who stole my past and manipulated my memories. Joanne settled into an armchair. "It's more complicated than that, Elizabeth. Harold was protecting you in his way." "Protecting me?" I repeated incredulously. "By making me believe my family was dead? By keeping me from my dying mother? What possible justification could there be for that?" She sighed heavily. "You really don't remember anything, do you? Not the hospital, not the treatments." I shook my head, confused. "What treatments?" "You had a breakdown, Elizabeth. A serious psychological crisis during your sophomore year of college." Joanne leaned forward. "It started with mood swings, then escalated to paranoid delusions, and eventually a suicide attempt. You were diagnosed with schizophrenia." The word hit me like a physical blow. That's not true, I whispered, but uncertainty crept into my voice. You were institutionalized for 8 months, she continued. Harold was a graduate student in psychology doing an internship at the hospital. That's where you met. My mind raced, trying to fit these revelations into the narrative of my life. But they remained foreign, like puzzle pieces from the wrong box. If this is true, why would he erase my family from my memories? Why tell me you were all dead? Joanne's eyes filled with tears. Because our father was the trigger, the source of your trauma. She reached for her purse and withdrew an old photograph, a teenage girl with my face, standing beside a stern-looking man. Our father was a respected church deacon in public. Behind closed doors, he was... She paused, searching for words. He was not a kind man, Elizabeth. What he did to you over the years, the psychological torment, the control, the punishments. I stared at the photo, feeling a creeping dread at the edges of my consciousness. The man's face stirred something dark and formless in my mind, like a shadow glimpsed in peripheral vision. Your breakdown came after he found you at college. You'd escaped to Boston, changed your major without his permission, started dating a boy he didn't approve of. He showed up at your dorm, threatened to drag you home. I don't remember any of this, I said, but my voice sounded distant, even to myself. The doctors tried various treatments. Nothing worked until Harold suggested a radical approach, creating a clean break from the source of trauma. With the leading psychiatrist's approval, he helped you build a new narrative. Your parents had died, you were alone, free to become whoever you wanted to be. That's unethical. Malpractice. By today's standards, absolutely, Joanne agreed. But in 1984, experimental psychiatric treatments weren't uncommon, especially for severe cases. And it worked, Elizabeth. You recovered, built a new life. But my family, you, our mother, Harold made a judgment call. He believed that any contact might trigger a relapse. Our father was still alive then, still looking for you. Harold was protecting you from him, first and foremost. I stood up abruptly, pacing the room. So he married me while serving as my... What? Doctor? Guardian? How is that not a horrible abuse of power? I've asked myself the same question over the years, Joanne admitted. When I discovered you were married to him, I was horrified. That's why I started writing the letters demanding he tell you the truth. I remembered the timeline suddenly. The letters stopped in 2003. Why? A shadow crossed Joanne's face. Harold came to see me, explained that you were finally going to become a mother. You were adopting a child. He said the stress of learning about your past could jeopardize the adoption, maybe trigger another episode. He begged for more time. And you agreed? I couldn't keep the accusation from my voice. I was wrong, she said simply. I let your happiness take precedence over your right to know the truth. By the time I realized my mistake, years had passed. Then Alex found me. At the mention of his name, I felt my anger resurging. And what's his role in all this? Why come back now with this convenient will, claiming everything? Is this some kind of revenge for a life of lies? Joanne looked uncomfortable. Alex should explain his part himself. No, I said firmly. You know what he's planning. Tell me. She hesitated, then relented. Harold contacted Alex about a year ago. They met secretly several times. During those meetings, Harold confessed everything. About your past. About the manipulation of your memories. He was dying, Elizabeth. What? Harold died of a sudden heart attack. Joanne shook her head. He had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. He knew he had months to live. The heart attack just accelerated the inevitable. The room seemed to tilt around me. Another lie. How many were there? Harold wanted to make amends, Joanne continued. He gave Alex the letters, told him to find me, to help piece your real life back together after he was gone. And the will? Taking everything from me? That was Harold's idea of making amends? The will is a fake, she said quietly. Alex created it. Why would he do that? Because he needed leverage, a way to force a confrontation that you couldn't ignore or dismiss. After what Harold did to you, Alex was afraid you might refuse to listen, might reject the truth to preserve the life you'd built. I sank back onto the couch, overwhelmed. So this whole inheritance drama, the threats to make me homeless, it was all a manipulation to make me face some traumatic past I don't even remember. I know it sounds cruel, Joanne acknowledged. But Alex was angry, not just at Harold, but at the whole situation. Finding out your adopted father had essentially stolen his mother's identity, her past. It broke something in him. And what about me? I asked, my voice cracking. What happens to me in all this? My husband is dead. My son hates me for things I don't remember doing, and apparently my entire life has been built on lies. Joanne moved to sit beside me, tentatively taking my hand. It felt strange, both alien and familiar, like a dream half remembered upon waking. You have choices now, Elizabeth. Real ones, not the fabricated options Harold allowed you. You can reconnect with your real family. There are brothers, nieces, nephews who've heard about you their whole lives. Or you can walk away from all of this. Either way, you'll be choosing based on truth, not manipulation. A knock at the door interrupted us. I opened it to find Martin and Kara standing there, their expressions grave. Elizabeth, we need to talk, Martin said urgently. We found something disturbing about Harold's files. His eyes widened as he spotted Joanne. Who's this? My sister, I said, the words feeling strange on my tongue. Apparently. Martin looked alarmed. We need to speak privately. Now. Whatever you have to say, you can say in front of her, I insisted, suddenly protective of this connection to my true past. Martin exchanged glances with Kara, then reluctantly pulled out a folder. We accessed Harold's safety deposit box. Inside was a journal and financial records spanning decades. He hesitated. Elizabeth, Harold was embezzling from his firm for years. Millions of dollars siphoned into offshore accounts. What? I felt as if I'd been struck again. How many more revelations could one night hold? There's more, Kara added. The journal details payments to doctors, psychiatric facilities, and a man named Robert Winters. Joanne gasped audibly. Who is Robert Winters? I asked, looking between them. He was the psychiatrist who treated you, Joanne whispered. The one who approved Harold's treatment plan for your condition. Martin nodded grimly. According to these records, Harold continued paying him for decades. Long after Elizabeth was supposedly cured, the last payment was made 3 weeks before Harold died. Why would he keep paying the doctor? I asked. To ensure his silence, Kara said. But that's not the worst part. She pulled out a final document. This is a copy of a disciplinary action against Dr. Winters from 1987. His license was suspended for unethical treatment protocols and inappropriate relationships with patients. The implications crashed over me in waves. Harold hadn't just manipulated my memories, he'd conspired with an unethical doctor, paid him for decades to maintain the deception. And the money? I asked faintly. The embezzled funds? Martin looked uncomfortable. Most of it was transferred to a numbered account in Switzerland, 2 weeks before Harold died. Let me guess, I said bitterly. The account holder is Alexander Reeves. No, Kara replied, surprising me. The account holder is Elizabeth Matthews, your maiden name. My eyes shot to Joanne, who looked as shocked as I felt. Before anyone could speak, the front door opened. Alex stood there, key in hand. Harold's key, I realized numbly. I see the gang's all here, he said, his voice tight as he surveyed the room. Good. Then we can finally get everything out in the open. His eyes met mine, filled with a complex mixture of anger, pain, and something else. Determination, perhaps. Or vindication. It's time for the final truth, Mother, he said, about what Harold really did, and why I've spent the last year planning exactly how he, and you, would pay for it. Alex closed the door behind him and stood facing us, his posture rigid. The boy I'd raised was somewhere in this stranger's face, but hidden behind layers of pain and determination I couldn't penetrate. You found the financial records, he said, noticing the documents in Martin's hands. Good. That saves some explanation. Explanation? I repeated, finding my voice. You mean justification for trying to steal my home? For threatening me at my husband's funeral? Alex's expression hardened. Your husband, he said, the words dripping with contempt. Do you want to know what your precious Harold was really doing with that embezzled money? Alex, Joanne said warningly. We agreed to do this carefully. He ignored her, focusing entirely on me. When I found those letters at 17, I confronted him. Threatened to tell you everything. Want to know what he did? No one spoke. The tension in the room was suffocating. He offered me money to disappear. $100,000 to walk away and never contact you again. Alex's laugh was bitter. Dear old dad, solving his problems with cash. I took it. I was a scared, angry kid with nowhere to go. Used it to start over, become Alexander Reeves. My mind reeled. Harold had paid our son to disappear? Had deliberately kept him from me for 20 years? I tried to forget this family, Alex continued. Built a life in Europe, even married briefly. His expression flickered with some private pain. Then last year, Harold tracked me down, said he was dying, wanted to make amends. He pulled out his phone, showed us a photo. Harold in a hospital bed, looking gaunt. He claimed he'd protected you from a traumatic past, that everything he'd done was for your benefit. Classic Harold, rewriting history to cast himself as the hero. What do you mean? I asked. I didn't believe him, so I started digging. Found Dr. Winters. Paid him more than Harold ever did for the real story. Alex's eyes locked on mine. There was no schizophrenia diagnosis, Mother. No psychotic break. That was Harold's fabrication. Joanne gasped. But I saw the hospital records. Falsified, Alex cut in. With Winters' help. Elizabeth Matthews wasn't mentally ill. She was hiding from an abusive father, yes. But she was lucid, strong, determined to build a new life. He turned to me again. You were Harold's patient, briefly, for situational depression. But when your family started looking for you, he saw an opportunity. You were young, vulnerable, isolated. The perfect target for his experimental treatment. That's absurd, I said, but doubt had crept into my voice. Why would he do that? Control, Alex said simply. And money. Your family was wealthy, Elizabeth. Old money. Tied up in trusts you couldn't access until you were 30, unless you married. The floor seemed to drop beneath me. He married me for my money? He married you to get his hands on your inheritance. Over $10 million in 1984. Once you were declared mentally incompetent and he became your husband, he gained control of everything. Martin was frantically checking the documents. There's a trust mentioned here. Matthews Family Holdings. Harold used your money to build his entire career, Alex continued relentlessly. The prestigious accounting firm? Founded with your inheritance. The investments, the properties, the comfortable life you both enjoyed. All originally financed by the fortune he stole from you. I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The magnitude of the betrayal was too enormous to process. When I confronted him with what I'd learned, he was already dying. Knew he had months left. Alex's voice grew quieter. He made me an offer. Transfer the bulk of the remaining money back to you under your maiden name, if I promised to help you recover your real identity after he was gone. And you agreed? Kara asked skeptically. Not exactly. Alex's expression darkened. I agreed to help my mother reclaim her identity and her money, but I had my own conditions. Harold had to admit everything in writing. Had to face what he'd done. He pulled out a sealed envelope. His full confession. Every manipulation, every lie, every dollar he stole. If the money's already in my name, why the charade with the fake will? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Why put me through this nightmare? Alex hesitated, and for the first time, I glimpsed uncertainty in his expression. Because I was angry. At him, at you, at everything. I wanted him exposed. I wanted you to know how thoroughly you'd been deceived. He looked away, and I needed to know if any part of our family had been real. Our family was real, I said fiercely. Whatever Harold did, however he manipulated me, my love for you was always real, Alex. Was it? He challenged. Or was that just another part of the perfect life he constructed? The dutiful wife, the loving mother, all built on a foundation of lies? I stood up, anger finally cutting through my shock. How dare you question my love for you? I searched for you for years after you left. Celebrated your birthday alone. Kept your room exactly as you left it. Harold may have stolen my past, but he couldn't dictate my heart. For the first time, Alex looked shaken. Joanne stepped between us. This isn't helping, Alex. We agreed to focus on restoration, not punishment. Restoration? I asked. Martin cleared his throat. I believe they're referring to the money. If what Alex says is true, the Swiss account holds funds that rightfully belong to you. Your family inheritance, plus whatever Harold embezzled over the years. Approximately $23 million, Alex confirmed, plus this house and other assets. I felt dizzy. I don't care about the money. I care about the life I thought I had, the husband I thought I knew, the son I thought I'd lost. Abruptly, I walked to the mantel and picked up my wedding photograph. For 43 years, I'd looked at this image of Harold and seen love, security, partnership. Now I saw calculation, manipulation, theft. With sudden clarity, I hurled the frame against the wall. The glass shattered, shards skittering across the hardwood floor. "Elizabeth!" Martin exclaimed, startled. "No," I said, my voice growing stronger. "No more lies. No more manipulation. No more feeling sorry for myself." I turned to face Alex. "You wanted to punish Harold through me. Make me suffer for his sins. But I've already suffered enough as his victim." Alex flinched at my words. "I'm not the woman Harold created anymore," I continued. "From this moment on, I'll discover who Elizabeth Matthews really is, the woman he tried to erase, and I'll do it without his money." "What are you saying?" Joanne asked. "I'm saying I don't want the $23 million. I don't want any of it." I looked around the room, at these people entangled in my unraveling life. The money wasn't mine to begin with. It was controlled by a man who stole my identity, my family, my choices. Using it would keep me chained to Harold's legacy. Kara looked confused. "But without it, you'll have nothing." "I'll have myself," I countered. For the first time in over 40 years. I turned to Alex. "As for you, take the money. Consider it payment for the family Harold stole from both of us." He stared at me in disbelief. "I don't want your money." "Then donate it. Burn it." "I don't care." I stepped closer to him. "What I want to know is whether my son still exists somewhere inside Alexander Reeves. Because if he does, I'd like the chance to know him as the real Elizabeth, not Harold's creation." Something shifted in Alex's expression, a softening around the eyes that reminded me of the little boy who'd once crawled into my lap during thunderstorms. "I thought I wanted revenge," he said quietly. "Thought making you face the truth would somehow balance the scales." "But watching you now," he shook his head, "you're stronger than he ever knew. Than I knew. Then I knew," I added with a small smile. Joanne cleared her throat. "Elizabeth, whatever you decide about the money, you should know you still have family. Brothers who've wondered about you for decades. Nieces and nephews eager to meet their long-lost aunt." The thought was overwhelming. A ready-made family I'd never known existed. "One step at a time," I said, feeling surprisingly calm amid the emotional storm. "First, I need to discover who I am without Harold's influence." I looked at the shattered wedding photograph on the floor. "Martin, I want you to handle the legal aspects of all this. Expose Harold's embezzlement. Notify the proper authorities. His partners at the firm deserve to know the truth." "Are you sure?" he asked. "It will mean public scandal. Your name in the papers." "Not my name," I said firmly. Elizabeth Matthews was never part of his crimes. Elizabeth Harrington was his unwitting accomplice, and she doesn't exist anymore. I turned to Kara. "Can you help me legally reclaim my original identity?" She nodded, looking impressed. "Absolutely." Finally, I faced Alex. "No more schemes, no more manipulation. If you want any relationship with me going forward, it starts with honesty." He studied me for a long moment, then slowly nodded. "I'm staying at the Westbridge Hotel, room 312. When you're ready to talk, really talk, I'll be there." As he turned to leave, I called after him. "Alex?" He paused, looking back. "Harold's watch, the one your grandfather gave him." Something like guilt flashed across his face. "Keep it," I said. "It should stay in the family." After Alex and Joanne left, promising to return the next day, I sat with Martin and Kara, planning my next steps in this strange new reality. "Where will you go?" Kara asked. "If you're giving up this house?" I considered the question. "I've always wanted to see the coast of Maine. Maybe I'll start there." "Alone?" Martin looked concerned. I smiled, feeling a newfound lightness despite everything. "Not alone, just independent. There's a difference." Later that night, after they'd gone, I walked through the house that had been my home for decades. Each room held memories, some joyful, some ordinary, all colored now by the knowledge of Harold's deception. In our bedroom, I opened his closet and breathed in his familiar scent one last time. Then I reached for the highest shelf, where he kept his personal lockbox, the one I'd never been allowed to open. The combination was our wedding date. Ironic. Inside, as I'd begun to suspect, were photographs. Old, faded images of a younger me with people I didn't recognize but somehow knew. A teenage Elizabeth with 2 young men. My brothers. A family gathering at a lake house. A gray-haired woman holding my hand at what appeared to be a college graduation. Harold hadn't destroyed every trace of my past. He'd kept these connections, these pieces of my true identity, locked away where I wouldn't find them, but preserved, nonetheless. His final act of both control and perhaps something like love. I gathered the photographs and placed them in my suitcase, alongside the few belongings I'd decided to take with me. The rest would go to charity. At dawn, I called a taxi and took one last look at the house that had been both my home and my prison. I felt no sadness leaving it behind, only a growing curiosity about the woman I would become. As the taxi pulled away, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "Found more family photos in my hotel room. Harold must have given them to me during our last meeting. Yours whenever you're ready. No strings attached." I smiled, typing back. "Having coffee at Margot's Cafe tomorrow at 10. Join me if you'd like to meet your mother, the real one this time." 3 months later, I stood on a rocky Maine shoreline, watching waves crash against the cliffs. My small rental cottage sat just up the hill, its wide porch offering views of the ever-changing ocean. Behind me, car doors slammed. Voices called my name. My real name. "Aunt Elizabeth, we made it!" I turned to see my niece Rebecca and her family making their way down the path. Behind them came Joanne, carrying a basket of food. And at the rear of the group, walking slowly, cautiously, was Alex. He'd been joining these family gatherings sporadically, still finding his place in this reconstructed family narrative, still deciding who Alexander Reeves might become in relation to the mother he was getting to know for the first time. We were both works in progress, navigating a relationship unburdened by Harold's manipulations but shadowed by his legacy. "You look good," Alex said, approaching me while the others headed to the cottage. "Happy. I am," I replied truthfully. "Most days." He nodded, understanding the qualifier. Some days were still hard, the weight of lost decades pressing down. But increasingly, those days grew fewer. "The foundation is officially up and running," he said, referring to the Matthews Recovery Foundation we'd established with Harold's ill-gotten millions. "First grants go out next month to organizations helping victims of psychological abuse." "Harold would hate that," I observed. Alex smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I know. That's why it's perfect." Together, we turned toward the cottage, where my newfound family waited. The path forward wasn't clear or easy, but for the first time in over 40 years, it was truly mine to choose. As we walked, I realized that in losing everything Harold had built for me, I'd finally found something real. Myself.